Corey Lewandowski, senior campaign official for Trump 2024, going to be with us bottom of this hour. And next hour, Bernie Moreno, who is running for Senate in Ohio. Look, Ohio is good for the Republicans, I think, on the presidential side, but it's going to be a tight Senate race. You know, you always got to remember, we should start to call it it's the Bashir effect, Clay, where even in a very red state, you can have very, very blue sadness happen. You know, the governor of Kentucky, which is a very red state, is a Democrat. You could have a Democrat senator in Ohio if unless Bernie Moreno comes out on top, and I think he will. We'll talk to him third hour. Just letting you know, we got two great guests. Also, if you're a VIP, for example, and you want to get a question to us about what you want to know about the Trump 2024 campaign, we got Corey Lewandowski. He was with Trump going way back to 2016, as you know, working on the campaign. So we can get him some good questions about ground game, turnout, you know, door knocking, oppo ads, you name it, right? I mean, the real nuts and bolts of how you win. And that's really what the focus has to be right now. So we will get into all of that. But Clay, I'd mentioned this before, just because, you know, we should have our buddy Vivek back on the show sometime soon.
I'm going to be with him tomorrow in L.A., Buck. I'll get him on with us.
Why don't you tell him to come hang out? Tell him to come hang out.
I'll get him to come on the show. Maybe I can get him on the show tomorrow. But I'm going to be in L.A. with him all day tomorrow. So we'll see how it goes.
And so I think that, by the way, it's funny, you know how Kamala Harris, everyone always says she's like the person who's trying to extend the word limit of what she's writing about the book report without having read the book. I want to see if we could get Vivek. Like, we should just ask Vivek random questions to which it's not even feasible that he could know the answer, and see how good his answers would be, because I think they'd be very good. Like, Vivek, you don't speak hieroglyphics or, you don't speak ancient Greek, but what do you think about ancient Greek in the following context? Anyway, Vivek's obviously a very skilled orator, and that was on display here in this exchange with CNN. You had one of their anchors. I don't really know much about their anchors these days. They're pretty
join the club.
You know what I mean? I'm not the only one, right? So they're not on airports anymore, right? They that deal. CNN used to pay to be in the airports. I check that out, right? They used to pay the airports to carry the programming that nobody wanted to watch. I don't know if they're still doing this or not, but I think that deal went away. Anyway, here is one of their anchors. And this is critical because this goes to the heart of the whole Democrat, magic show right now, which is, look here, but don't look here. Like they're making things appear out of nowhere or disappear in the case of Kamala's record. And Vivek took them to task on this. Listen to what he had to say.
You brought up some claims about Kamala Harris. I want to finish that discussion. She said she didn't favor a ban on fracking now. The reality is she was one of the strongest proponents of that ban, so much so that when she was in California, she sued the Obama administration over granting fracking permits. She didn't just favor the abolition of private health insurance. She was a co-sponsor of the bill with Bernie Sanders as a U.S. Senator for Medicare for All for America. The reality is, when you think about the Green New Deal, she was the chief proponent, not just as a co-sponsor of the legislation, but going further and saying she would end the filibuster in the Senate to ram that through. So the reality is she can say what she wants to say now. Those are actions she has taken. Is someone allowed to evolve? Of course they are. But she deserves to explain exactly why she's changed those positions, exactly what her position is. If it's not a ban on fracking, what exactly is it? What exactly is her health care plan if she no longer favors abolishing private health insurance, which just 4 short years ago when she ran for president, she did. And that's the kind of scrutiny that's been missing. I think Donald Trump has received plenty of scrutiny, and I give credit to him for sitting for hostile interviews that Kamala Harris has not.
Okay, the latter part of it, we know she's not going to explain it because there is no explanation. I think, Clay, what's critical, and Vivek pointed this out and eloquently laid this out on CNN. You can tell the anchor's like, gosh darn it, which one of my producers booked this guy? This was a bad idea, although it is getting them some attention, so the CNN's got that going for it. Clay, Kamala wasn't just another Democrat senator or Democrat candidate for the presidency. Kamala Harris was far left. She was on some of the most hardcore left-wing policies of the Democrat Party. she was in the vanguard. I mean, this is essentially like if Bernie Sanders all of a sudden showed up and he's like, you know what? I'm a centrist. Everything that I used to say, I don't believe it anymore.
That's a great Bernie Sanders. I give credit to Vivek because, as you mentioned, this is on CNN. And we're now into the persuadable voter part of the 2024 election cycle. We're 62 days out. There are 5 to 10% of voters out there that may not have made up their minds because they've been paying little attention because they got kids or grandkids and they're running around on a day-to-day basis and they have their life going on and they aren't obsessed with the TikTok of daily political debate. But here on CNN and on MSNBC, you have an opportunity to make arguments. And I would say this, whatever you think about Vivek and J.D. Vance, they are TV thoroughbreds. They can show up and handle a question, knock it back out of the park in response. Who do you think, honestly, Buck, on the Democrat side is actually a debate thoroughbred where when they get a question, you may not agree with them, but you say, man, that is an absolute clinic? I don't know that they have any. And I think the answer is because they are so used to living in a world where the media carries the water for them that it makes their argument weak and unrefined. And I think you saw that with DeSantis versus Newsom when they actually got a little bit of pushback. He had no idea how to deal with facts.
Well, you see this at a different level, but it's the exact same phenomenon you're talking about with college Republicans versus the college leftist Democrats running around. They are so used to the false consensus of their left-wing ideas on campuses that when these, young men and women, we always say kids, but they're young men and women, are confronted with serious arguments from the other side, they get emotional and they melt and they snowflake and they freak out and all that stuff, right? Whereas college Republicans, because the professors and most of the kids around you, they've been in Fight Club the whole time, and people want to throw a punch at them. They're ready to go. The other side, they're not used to it at all. And maybe we, in this Fight Club, wear boat shoes and blue blazers with brass buttons, but we still, as college Republicans, know how to throw a punch.
I was at GW today, George Washington University, speaking, and I got a question in the audience, Buck, and it was, how do you deal with misinformation and disinformation in the political arena? And I think the guy was stunned with my answer. I said, well, you have more speech. I said the cure for lies and for deceitful speech is not trying to have somebody out there with a magic wand saying, we've got to censor this, we've got to take this out. It's to allow a more full-throated debate. And I think Republicans are used to it. We're at least like you and I would bet this quite strongly. If CNN had us on and they said, hey, can you argue the leftist perspective? I think you and I could argue the left-wing perspective better than most left-wingers, because in order to make right-wing arguments or centrist arguments, you have to understand the whole scope of argument. And I don't think most Democrats do, because they are so out of touch with what Republicans are saying, whereas I think Republicans know very much what Democrats are saying. The exposure to arguments is much stronger on the right than it is to the left.
Oh, I could do a podcast. I could dye a patch of my hair purple and get a nose ring or 3, and I could do a podcast as a leftist tomorrow, and as long as I could disguise my voice, no one would have any idea it was a put on. I know exactly what they think, right? That's another difference about left and right. And there's been some most sociology is just the advancement of left-wing ideology through the pseudo lens of science, or the lens of a pseudoscience. But there has been some research to show that when we say this is what I think Democrats think, not just you and me, meaning Clay, but anyone on the right has a much better idea of the left-wing argument. I mean, for example, the left-wing argument, and you'll see this all the time, on abortion is always just about, they just say, why do you want to control our bodies? And they never even address, because they believe the right or the pro-life position is there's another body, there's a little baby, there's a little body. They don't even address that. It's always just, why do you want to control our bodies? I mean, they're saying that Trump, the guy who was like the owner of the Miss Universe competition is going to force women into burqas or whatever it is from that
Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, this is the burqa is obviously a Taliban thing, but I'm saying like this is insane. But I do think that conservatives have a better understanding of what the other side believes. I also think that and this was a Christopher Hitchens argument, who's now departed, who was good on some things and bad. He's kind of like RFK Jr., very good on some things, wrong on others. But he would say that, Clay, it's not just about, to your point about the censorship and shutting down, it's not just that you need to hear the right argument, which is the answer that you get from so many of the disinformation experts, and they all say that. Their voice has to go up a few octaves. Disinformation, Russia collusion. It's that you need to hear the wrong argument, too, because then you can actually understand what the formulation is for the other side and know that the right argument is right. You can't actually know what the truth is if you are never exposed to what is not true in political argument, in political debate. You know what I mean? That's another part of it.
And also, it allows you to know what the counterpunch is. No successful argument or debate can just be you throwing punches. And a lot of people, I talk to this about the people we hire at Outkick. Hey, you're going to write opinion pieces, everything else. When you write your opinion piece, make sure that you are aware of what the 2 or 3 best counterpunches are to whatever your argument is. In an ideal world, you address them in the context of your argument and dismiss them, but at least be aware of it. And I think what social media has created, particularly on the left, Buck, is they don't actually consider when you throw a punch. And I box 3 days a week. I love to box. I don't get punched, thankfully. I got too much on my head. I got to make sure that it still works. But a huge part of training to box is not just thinking about what you're doing on your initial punch. It's that you have to contemplate the counterpunch. And if you watch boxing, people generally get knocked out, not because they have not punched enough or something like that. It's because when you punch, you open yourself up to a devastating counterattack. And I don't think Democrats, because they're being protected by the media, they basically have officials jumping in and trying to stop them from ever having to take the consequences of their counterpunch. Their ideas are flabby. They're not in shape. And if Trump is disciplined in 6 days, I think Kamala is going to leave herself open to one devastating counterpunch after another in that debate because she's taken every side of every perspective. Now, I'm not sure that Trump will be disciplined enough to kind of weigh back. Trump is more of a puncher than a counterpuncher, but you often win debates with counterpunches, not with punches. And that, to me, is where Kamala and many Democrats are wide open in this perspective.
I think she's also going to try to, if she has any real skill or tact up there, which I'm not sure she will, but she's going to try to get under Trump's skin and get him to fly off the handle on something. That's the best. She's not going to expose Trump on policy because he's right on policy. It's not about when you know this thing about Trump, then you're gonna. She's going to try to use. I should say her only strategy to true victory is she goes after Trump and tries to bait him personally and get him to flip out up there.
We can't have bad Trump that showed up for the first debate against Joe Biden. Trump, the worst debate performance of Donald Trump's career, in my opinion, was the first debate against Joe Biden in 2020. If he had had the same debate performance in the second debate, I think Trump, even with all the rig job, would have won. I think he lost a lot of people with that first debate. He just needs to keep it between the lines. Don't perform poorly.
He was excellent against Biden, too. I know people can say, but it was so easy. No, he made the right decision, which was let everyone see Biden. He could have jumped in there and shouted and been too aggressive. There are a lot of ways that he could have at least run some unintentional interference for Biden. He didn't do it.
Correct.
I thought he was excellent under the circumstances, and I think that's proven by the reality that it destroyed the Biden campaign. So, look, is there rising crime in America? In a lot of cities, it's a mess. I just talked to a friend of mine who got assaulted in Central Park a week ago. I mean, this can happen anytime, anywhere. That's why I want to tell you about Sabre. It's spelled S-A-B-R-E. Sabre is a family-owned business. They understand the importance of protecting loved ones. It's also the number one made in the USA pepper spray brand, trusted by law enforcement and families. Accept no imitations of this, my friends. You want Sabre. They've got a whole range of excellent products for defense, but the one I want to tell you about first is the Sabre Pepper Projectile Launcher. It's a less lethal, fast-loading, no recoil solution, delivering powerful stopping power up to 175 feet. The real advantage, if you miss it, creates a 6-foot pepper cloud, causing intense sensory irritation, which can overwhelm the bad guy and let you get out of there safely. Gives you and your family the opportunity to protect yourselves. Sabre doesn't stop there. They offer stun guns for personal protection, as well as bear and mountain lion spray for outdoor adventures, and they provide essential home security items like door and window alarms, too. Sabre is your one-stop shop for personal protection of a less lethal variety. Go check it out yourself. Go to Sabre Red. That's SABRE Red. SaberRed.com/launcher. SaberRed.com/launcher, or call 844-824-SAFE. That's 844-824-SAFE today.